So I've been pretty tough on RFK Jr., and I'm pretty tough on him because I think it's merited. So this is a guy who's running in the Democratic primary. Crystal asked him if he supports Medicare for all, and his answer was basically the Obama answer. If I was starting from scratch, I'd do it, but I don't think it's really politically feasible. It's not politically realistic. Okay, so just cut the fluff out and just say, I'm not in favor of it. I'm not going to fight for it. She also asked him about, UBI, federal jobs guarantee, all these things. When it comes to policies that I care deeply about, the reaction is, but the stuff he's really obsessed with and the stuff he really cares about is corporate capture of government, right? And, big pharma capture of government. Now, those are definitely legitimate issues. What are his solutions, though? Well, Crystal asked him, okay, we see the corporate capture of government. We see big pharma buying, the FDA, the CDC, etc. So would you be in favor of nationalizing those agencies so that there is no private money or corporate money going to these agencies and there isn't that capture that's there isn't that corruption? The way to fix this is to get rid of the profit motive, take it out of the realm of capitalism, nationalize it, make it public. There is no profit margin. Government does the research and development, and then it's sold at cost, or it comes out of our tax money. And he said, no, I wouldn't go that far. Okay, well then what are we really talking about here? But beyond that, beyond all that, the more important part is he just says stuff that's not true. And I don't care who's saying stuff. If it's not true, I'm against it. So the biggest one, of course, is all the anti-vaccine stuff. He says he still believes in that early 2000s, the thimerosal and the mercury in the vaccines is giving kids autism. Well, guess what? Thimerosal was taken out of the majority of vaccines all the way back in 2001, okay? And even if it wasn't, there's two different kinds of mercury, and the one that was in the vaccines was not the one that was damaging anybody or causing autism because they studied it extensively and they found it's simply not true. You guys know this, we've talked about it a million times, but the whole vaccines cause autism thing is stemmed from a guy named Dr. Andrew Wakefield, who's no longer a doctor because his medical license was revoked. It wasn't revoked because he was standing up to big pharma and powerful interests, and that's why it was revoked. It was revoked because his findings were not true. He didn't even have a control group in one of his original studies. It was just junk science. It was just fake science. So anyway, but you hear all that, and you might think, well, look, he might not be right on all the specific facts, but he's generally correct about the corporate capture of government. He might have a different way of addressing it. That's not the way you like, Kyle, but he might still try to fight the corporate capture of government. And, that's why we shouldn't be as hard on him. Well, guess what? Not only are his ideas wrong about this stuff, look who he's surrounding himself with. This is in Slate. RFK Jr. to hold event with doctor who says COVID vaccine makes forks stick to your body. Insurgent Democratic presidential candidate Robert F. Kennedy Jr. is holding an online health policy roundtable Tuesday night. Longtime Ohio political reporter Darrell Rowland notes that one of the participants in the event is Sherry Tenpenny, an osteopathic doctor whose provocative testimony to the Ohio House Health Committee made national news in June 2021. So this is the person who he's listening to, or who he's doing an event with, an advisor of his, you might say, for a health policy roundtable. Well, let's see how serious she is.
I'm sure you've seen the pictures all over the internet of people who've had these shots and now they're magnetized.
Some of the information that I think had been discussed on your podcast related to EMF frequencies.
That was a thought.
And
it was because right now we're all kind of hypothesizing. I mean, what is it that's actually being transmitted that's causing all of these things? Is it a combination of the protein, which now we're finding has a metal attached to it?
The Ohio State Legislature heard testimony from proponents and opponents of a proposal bill that aims to prohibit mandatory vaccines.
I'm sure you've seen the pictures all over the internet of people who've had these shots and now they're magnetized. They can put a key on their forehead, it sticks. They can put spoons and forks all over them and they can stick. Because now we think that there's a metal piece to that.
So I have a key and a bobby pin here. Explain to me why the key sticks to me. It sticks to my neck, too. Yeah, so if somebody can explain this, that would be great. Any questions?
COVID-19 vaccines do not contain metals or microchips.
There's been people who've long suspected that there was some sort of an interface, yet to be defined, an interface between what's being injected in these shots and all of the 5G towers. Not proven yet, but we're trying to figure out what is it that's being transmitted to these unvaccinated people that are causing health problems. What will your life review look like at the end of your life? Will the Lord say to you something like, you coerce people into being injected with this gene modification technology that irreversibly disrupts your chromosomes?
So look, there's a spectrum of anti-vaccine beliefs and commentary, okay? And some people are just, hey, I read a news story, it's something happened when somebody took the shot, it's questionable, and so I'm agnostic, I'm not sure, I'm a little scared to go down that path. There's a million people like that, right? And that I don't find all that objectionable. It's just called absorbing information, and you're not an expert in it, and you just have questions, right? That's perfectly fine. Or I know somebody who had a bad reaction or whatever. I get that. But there's also people on the far end of the spectrum who believe and propagate the dumbest ideas you've ever heard in your life. We're talking about full on, like they got the microchip in the vaccine and they're going to track you, or it's like a mass extermination program. And understand something, guys, in no uncertain terms, this woman is one of those people. You don't believe me? Listen for yourself.
We're seeing the tsunami of deaths that I've been talking about since the beginning of 21. Millions of people are going to die. When Judy Mikovits came out on Plandemic at the beginning of that and said that more than 50 million people are going to die, and everybody was like, whoa. And when they started interviewing me and asked me what did I think about that number, I said it's way too low.
More than 50 million people are going to die. And just to be clear, she's not saying going to die because of COVID. She's saying going to die because of the vaccine. That's what she's saying. More than 50 million people, she says, are going to die because of the vaccine. I like to think stuff like this doesn't even require a rebuttal, but it does, okay? So just so everybody understands, 6.9 million people have died from COVID. 6.9 million people have died from COVID. It's over 1 million in the U.S. alone, right? This is our best estimate, our best number that we have as of right now, okay? This is the best data we have as of right now. 72.3% of the global population received at least one dose of the vaccine. Guys, that is 5.5 billion people. 5.55 billion people have received at least one COVID shot. Are we seeing over 50 million people drop dead from the shot? Not even close. In fact, when you look into this and you don't go to the crankiest of crank outlets, right? Let's read this. This was back in 2021, July of 2021. And at the time, over 339 million vaccine doses were given to 187.2 million people in the U.S. The vaccines have been proven to be safe and effective. Vaccination is happening under the most intensive safety monitoring in U.S. history. How do we know if someone dies after getting a vaccine? The U.S. Food and Drug Administration, the FDA, requires vaccination providers to report any death after COVID-19 vaccination to the Vaccine Adverse Event Reporting System. That's what's called VAERS, which I'm sure you've heard a lot of in these anti-vaccine circles. When these reports are received, doctors from the CDC and FDA review death certificates, autopsies, and medical records to understand what happened with each person. So how many people have died after getting a vaccine? Between December 2020 and July 19th, 2021, VAERS received 6,207 reports of death. That is 0.0018% of doses among people who got a vaccine. But this doesn't mean the vaccine caused these deaths. Doctors and safety monitors carefully review the details of each case to see if it might be linked to the vaccine. There are only 3 deaths that appear to be linked to blood clots that occurred after people got the Johnson & Johnson vaccine. Since we now know how to correctly treat people who develop these blood clots, future deaths related to this very rare side effect can be prevented. In other words, this was as of July 2021. But at the time, there was a grand total of 3 deaths that were attributable in the U.S. to the vaccine. 3. Now, by the way, a lot of people like to say, the anti-vax type, like to say, well, no, 6,207 people died after getting the vaccine, so that's the actual number. Okay. That, if anybody happens to die within like a month of getting the vaccine, they report that. But some of the people who got the vaccine were 87 years old, were 92 years old, already had 14 other health conditions, were already on death's doorstep. And so that's why they have to look at each case specifically with a fine-tooth comb and determine, hey, is it actually the vaccine that caused this? So, of course, it is not the vaccine that caused it. Some people just die, right? That's how it is. Especially the older patients, especially the people with a million different pre-existing conditions. They could die from anything. You could die from a heart attack. You could die from a stroke. But the anti-vaccine people like to say, oh, it's because of the vaccine. But guys, none of that matters because even if you grant them, which you shouldn't, but even if you grant them, sure, 6,200 people died. We have this psychopath saying it's over 50 million people worldwide that are going to die from the vaccine. In no world is this person serious. And this person is on a panel advising RFK. Come on, man. We cannot be this stupid. Look, what people need to understand, and this drives me crazy, how black and white oftentimes people think. People sometimes are correctly anti-big pharma, but they go to such an absurd extent with it that they wind up crossing over into just being anti-medicine. Because big pharma is bad, because big pharma is corrupt, therefore, I'm even skeptical of whether or not antibiotics work, whether or not pain reliever X or Y works, whether or not vaccines work. So their skepticism, which is healthy, turns into cynicism, which is not healthy, and then they just go full anti-modern medicine. We've seen this with a number of people, including people on the left. And I don't know how to say this any clearer, guys. Antibiotics work, and big pharma still sucks and is corrupt. Vaccines work, but big pharma is corrupt and sucks. So you know what the solution is? We come full circle to what I said at the beginning of this segment. The solution is to nationalize big pharma. No more for-profit nonsense as part of it. No more greedy price gouging as part of big pharma. Nationalize it. The taxpayers pay for the research on the front end, so we should get the benefits of the drug on the back end without being charged an arm and a leg. It's that simple. So that's the solution. The problem is not big pharma is so bad that every single product big pharma makes doesn't work and it's all a lie. That's a child's way of viewing the world. That's your brain is poisoned by online bullshit. Anyway, let's listen to a little more of this psycho.
It's going to be much more than 50 million people in America alone. And we're already starting to see it.
So it's not more than 50 million people worldwide. It's more than 50 million in America alone. How do you respond? I don't know how to respond to people like this. The evidence is right in front of your face. That is not happening. COVID was the mass killer, and it killed almost 7 million people. COVID was. But she says it's the vaccine.
So the tsunami of deaths is coming. It's already here. And I believe that what's happening now and is starting to happen now is the tsunami of regret, of the people that fell for the lies. Your friends and family members and parents and children and all they did to your grandchildren just could not be told otherwise. But now that people are dying like flies, I mean, my business partner has 83 close people in his life that have died.
Yeah, I'm sure. I'm sure he does. I'm sure he does. Most people don't even know 83 people close. What are you talking about?
83.
Oh.
It's the beginning. And I predict that by the end of this year, every person in this room and every person listening behind here is going to know a minimum of 5, probably 10 or more close friends and family members that have died from these shots.
Look, there's people who can be wrong but sincere. You know, there's people who could be like mildly skeptical of vaccines. There's people who could be anti-mandate but pro-vaccine. And then there's this. Absolute cranks, charlatans, con women, frauds. That's what we're looking at here. And like I said, holding an event, RFK is holding an event with this woman. their words here. Health Policy Roundtable. Beyond a joke. Hey y'all, do me a favor and like and subscribe. It helps out big time in the algorithm. Click the bell as well for notifications when videos drop, and watch that video on screen right now. You know you want to.